Charles Ogletree was 70 years old. I want to bring in my panel right now. Joining us on today's show, Matt Manning, civil rights attorney out of Corpus Christi. We also have Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show. Kelly Bethea, communications strategist. Glad to have all three of you here. Michael, Matt said something, I think Barbara said the same thing in terms of how he availed himself to the public. And that's the thing. I mean, he would do black-owned radio. He would be speaking to various groups. I mean, he was a lot of places. He was not just sitting here being in the rarefied air of the halls of Harvard. He was out there among the people engaged in many of the prominent issues of the day involving African Americans.
Yeah, and not only that, but when he talked, you didn't have to consult a dictionary to understand what the hell he was saying either. Like some of these other, like some of these pseudo intellectuals you have out here. But I remember Charles Ogletree in different aspects. Probably most prominently for his work dealing with suing on behalf of reparations, his work seeking to get reparations for the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre. He was in the 2008 documentary called Before They Die, which is about the Tulsa Race Massacre and fighting for justice for the survivors. He also was suing for trying to get reparations for slavery as well, outside of the Tulsa Race Massacre. He was an attorney for Tupac Shakur before Tupac was killed. He was also, now people remember him on the national stage as well. He was part of the legal team for Anita Hill during the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings. So there's so many different aspects in which he was in the national spotlight. So this is a tremendous loss. You know, I didn't go to law school like my two colleagues here. I was supposed to go to law school, but ended up going to business school. But I was still very aware of Charles Ogletree. And we also know, you know, he was lost prematurely, but also Johnny Cochran, who also was trying to sue for reparations for African Americans. Johnny Cochran was the giant who was lost prematurely as well. So I think there's a lot can be learned from Charles Ogletree and understanding, even though he was a law professor at Harvard, he was from the people and for the people, okay? And he also taught us to really understand the power of law, why it's important for us to understand law as well, not just history. So this is a tremendous loss.
If you are a black lawyer, you did not know who Charles Ogletree was, your black card probably needs to be revoked.
Yeah, you're not paying attention. You know, and I'm so glad that you have the sisters on, especially the professor at Georgia State, because what I think, you know, Professor Ogletree embodied, I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but is the responsibility that I have tried to explain that I feel as a black lawyer. I think it's so important that we understand how important it is to work on behalf of the people. And I tell people, you know, my law license is our law license. Now, obviously, I'm the one practicing, but there's a sense of responsibility. And when you look at somebody like Professor Ogletree, Charles Ogletree, you know, you have not only a titan, but you have someone who never allowed his success to sever him from the people. And I think that's the important thing to take from this is that, one, you can make such important inroads on behalf of your people with being the best at what you do. But beyond that, you can never forget for whom you do it. And that's the lesson that I learned by, just his legal titan nature and just the fact that he pioneered so many things that, we're still talking about today. And particularly from the standpoint of where he did it, because I don't think that there is we have to discuss basically the fact that it's not lost on us that he was teaching at Harvard, went to some of the best universities in the country, and was spearheading some of the most complex and interesting legal theories and legal philosophies from that perspective. So I just think it's important to, if you're a black lawyer, to recognize not only the standard of excellence that he set, but the standard of responsibility that we all should aspire to uphold, because I think we're duty bound by virtue of our opportunity to make sure we foster betterment for our people.
Absolutely. Kelly, 2016, he was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. Passes away just 7 years later. It was 2018 where it sparked a huge concern for many of us when he went for a walk and was missing. I remember probably shortly after he made the announcement, we were supposed to have him on Tom's Journal Morning Show. And I remember talking to him, and he said, "Hey, Roland," he said, "not a problem." He said, "Call me at this number. I'll be walking the dog." And we called, and he never answered. And that's when, it was real. To lose this unbelievable mind just 7 years after being diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's just tells you how devastating this disease is.
Yeah, Alzheimer's itself is just completely unforgiving. It does not see race. It doesn't see gender. It doesn't see brilliance. Emphasis on the brilliance that is Professor Ogletree here. I heard, everybody giving their tributes and whatnot, but what I didn't hear just yet is how he was might as well have been a DC native. He was Mr. Legal DC here in Washington, DC, and the DMV at large, right? He was on the Board of Trustees for UDC, University District of Columbia. For those who don't know, that is an HBCU. So while he was a professor at Harvard, he was still giving back to HBCUs, which just goes to show you just how much heart he had. Like everyone has said, he wasn't uppity and elitist with his education, with his brilliance, with his mind. He always gave back. He always paid it forward, and he always made a way to cultivate the next generation of minds, as we see with President Obama, or former President Obama, and former First Lady Michelle Obama, as we see with the legacy of Black attorneys who have come out of Harvard since his tenure there. So Alzheimer's doesn't see that. Alzheimer's doesn't care about that. And I think that's what makes this even more heartbreaking, the fact that he was relatively young upon his passing. And I've no doubt that if it wasn't for this disease, he would have so much more to give. Like everyone has said, it is a great loss, and he will be sorely missed. But the legacy that he has left behind in Black lawyers, such as myself, such as Matt, such as the legacy, because that's really what it is, a legacy of brilliance that he has left behind, he will live on.
It's about this, but it's always about around this time, again, when they have their Institute on Martha's Vineyard. He was there every single year. He had a home there. He was always there. And I'll tell you all this. I'll leave you with the story here. Charles loved to go striped bass fishing. When I was there, he would be telling me these stories about, Roland, he said, we can go striped bass fishing. And I was like, Charles, look, bro, I don't fish. Okay? I play golf. There was an annual golf tournament for Ken Williams, named for Ken Williams. And for folks who don't know, Ken Williams was the brother who worked at Polaroid, who actually was the founder of the Polaroid Revolutionary Workers organization. And they were the ones who first really launched the movement to withhold economic dollars because of apartheid. And so Charles and I, he loved golf too. We played in the golf tournament together. And he would talk about, how he loved Martha's Vineyard, and you could just be driving down the street and folk just be walking. It was like being back in the days in the country. You just give somebody a ride. They would hop house to house. But he was he loved fishing, and he would catch so much striped bass that he would just take fish and clean it and drop it off at other people's houses and give them fish. So I have so many memories of Charles Ogletree, interviewing him many times, seeing him, hugging him, embracing him, talking with him. Truly was indeed a brilliant scholar. Michelle Roberts, former executive director of the NBA Players Association, she was the one that sent me a text this afternoon when I was at the NABJ Hall of Fame luncheon, notifying me about him becoming an ancestor. And so it is certainly sad news. He will be greatly missed.